Fox News Podcast presents Bret Baier's All-Star Panel.
America's got to be in the lead if you want to deal with these threats. We're going to lead.
The mourning is over. The Shiva is done. And if you're a conservative, you should be optimistic.
You know, my main priority right now is making sure that it delivers for the American people.
We have to make our country great again, and I will do that.
I think the president gets criticized by people all the time for the stuff he says, by people who ignore what he does.
Now, Fox's chief political anchor, Bret Baier.
All right, night one of the Republican National Convention kicked off with thousands of Americans packed into the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee as former President Trump's vice presidential running mate was officially announced.
They will change the course of our nation to the benefit of all American citizens and truly make our country great again. It is therefore my honor to nominate Ohio Senator J.D. Vance for the office of Vice President of the United States of America.
Many notable speakers took the stage Monday night, including some of the shortlist candidates for vice president, like South Carolina Senator Tim Scott and Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. But the most surprising was the primetime address delivered by Teamsters President Sean O'Brien, marking the first time a president from the union spoke at the RNC.
Now, you can have whatever opinion you want, but one thing is clear. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB.
Most powerful of all, though, was the arena's reaction to former President Donald Trump making his first appearance since surviving an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. He was greeted with massive cheers. To discuss what's happened so far and what's to come, we bring in our panel. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, co-host of The Five, Democratic strategist Jessica Tarlov, and Fox News Radio political analyst Josh Kraushaar. Great to see you all. Mr. Secretary, that was quite an emotional start to this thing, to see the former president after what happened on Saturday.
Yes, it was quite a moment to see him walk in, with the ear that was bandaged so the whole world could see the effects of what had happened that day. And then to see him come in to cheers that I think not only were shared in the arena last night, but I think from a broad spectrum of Americans who said, we're glad that our former president is okay. I got notes from around the world, too. They were happy to see him back on stage, doing the thing that we do, right? Democracy, coming to a convention, being part of it. It was a wonderful moment.
We've now confirmed that there was this Iranian threat of an assassination attempt on the former president. You've dealt with Iranian threats yourself for a long time. That aside, after that assassination attempt, how do you think things change politically and in the country?
Goodness, I hope politically folks will reframe their focus. They'll focus on the things that matter to the American people. I hope that's what took place, certainly what I saw at the convention last night, talking about things that matter to Americans, not some of the spurious attacks and the like. It's not productive. There are so many things that are vital to the American people to get right, and that should be what the campaign talks about, campaigns talk about and progress on. Bret, we have a way, though. People have short memories, and so I worry that this will be for a moment and won't be something that's sustainable. I hope the American people will hold all of us in the political arena accountable and say, nope, we want to hear about how you're going to solve my problems, not other things that are personal and denigrating and present real risk.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jessica. There's all these calls for unity and taking the temperature down, but maybe that'll get us to Tuesday.
No. People were hot behind the scenes, right? And I was glad that everyone issued the right statements and that we did get a little breather in public view, but you had, comments that people were making in private that's obviously leaking out, and Democrats have a lot going on our side of the aisle as we prepare to head to Chicago in the middle of August to nominate either President Biden or vote your conscience, which he gave the go-ahead for that.
Do you think that's still an open question?
voting your conscience?
No, I mean that he might not be the nominee.
Yes, I do. I just can't ignore reporting from an excellent reporter, Rachel Bade at Politico, that Nancy Pelosi is working the phones. If Nancy Pelosi is working the phones, you're in trouble. And Adam Schiff over the weekend was speaking at a fundraiser, and he said, we're going to lose the Senate and we're going to lose our chance at regaining the House. And Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are very close, obviously, as well. But I don't think it's a settled issue. And I think that his rally on Friday in Detroit was what people certainly wanted to see, and then shows up Monday with Lester Holt. And it was fine. But we need more than fine, because this is going to be, I think, a bit of a gut election, how people are feeling the enthusiasm. And I'm looking at the race, and I think it's going to be, and Josh will obviously weigh in on this, it's unmoved. Right. We're still back to 1 to 2 points. Fox poll, CBS poll, NBC poll. The enthusiasm gap is getting wider and wider. And from being here on the ground, every Trump voter is going to show up to vote. And you can't say that with the same certainty of every Democratic voter. And that's how you end up losing. There are more of us in the country than there are Republicans. But the question is, do we sit it out? Do we, I don't think anyone will split ticket. The RFK video was very interesting that was posted on social media.
Yeah, just to explain that, I mean, there was a post of a phone call between RFK Jr. and former President Trump, where Trump is essentially saying it'd be great if you came on board.
Right, and he did say no. And they also said a lot of vaccination lunacy, which I don't think helps either candidate, frankly. But you can see, Trump's trying to tie everything together at this moment, and he can feel it. I wasn't on air, but I was there when he came in, and it felt like when I went to see the Rolling Stones. You know, I enjoyed it less than the Stones, but I felt it.
I could sense that, Josh. It is galvanizing. Whatever you think about Saturday, and then this coming in the wake of that, the fact that he shows up, the fact that he walked in with the bandage, there is a sense, even among the never Trump or skeptical Trump crowd in Republican circles, that, they're coming on board.
Yeah, that was quite a moment last night, watching him in the arena with his family, with J.D. Vance sitting beside him. He seemed a little chastened. He seemed a little bit different. I think that was you're 1 inch away from death, perhaps, like he was with the assassination attempt Saturday. That's got to change anyone. And I'm really interested to hear his speech on Thursday, because I think there's a real opportunity. Biden, through no fault of his own, he just is not able to drive a message of unity. He's not able to give a speech. He's not able to do an interview with Lester Holt that really drives the nation's attention. It's sort of a limitation because of his age. And I think Democrats have known that for some time. And now it's becoming very, very apparent. I don't know how, Jessica, that they can switch the ticket. We're talking about deadlines coming up next week.
This DNC, that they want to push up the virtual roll call vote. And my understanding is that we will be able to get on the Ohio ballot, even if it goes to the convention, and they're saying it's not.
Right. They said moved it to September 1st instead of August 7th, and they want to keep the August 7th date.
Not loving it. And it's, I love Donna, and she's fantastic. And Terry McAuliffe signed the letter as well. But hell hath no fury like a Democrat that's been shut out of having a voice at this juncture. It's one thing you don't have a primary, and look, Donald Trump didn't have a primary going into 2020. That's not normal practice. Joe Biden won overwhelmingly, but no one can dispute the fact that things are different post-debate. And he admitted as much on the call with the Hispanic caucus. He said, I understand. I understand your concerns. So if they push up that vote and people feel like you couldn't even have a conversation about it, I think we're going to be really pissed.
I mean, for Republicans, isn't it something like you just want to sit back and watch, just see what goes on? It seems like such chaos.
Bret, it brings me no joy, I must say, to see a president that appears to me personally to be diminished. And Josh, you said through no fault of his own. Maybe. Maybe he can't control the message. He can't do an awful. I actually think it is. I think leadership, being the president of the United States, being the commander in chief of the most powerful nation in the world, I actually think he has a responsibility to lead. And Jessica, maybe this is to your point. If he can't, if to your point, it's no fault of his own. Boy, oh boy, the American people are going to sense that. And so it's not the case that I'm joyous sitting back watching a president who has now had 13 Americans killed in Afghanistan. Right, Putin's now invaded
By the way, he said 0 at the debate.
Yeah, the Gold Star family mothers and family members all know it, and I've met some of those families too. They all know it. This is an America that's got interest rates on mortgages, right? My son just bought a home, 7% on his 30-year fixed rate mortgage. 2.5, 3 years ago it was 3%. That is a different world for the American people. And when we see and when the president can't, for whatever reason, be strong and demonstrate his capacity to lead America forward. I think it's a good sign for President Trump's campaign, and I actually think it's great that Americans can see that.
Yeah, but if he does somehow choose to not be the nominee, how does he then still be the president for 6 months?
I don't know. Well, it's very hard to explain. I guess the answer is I got this for 6 more months, but I can't do 4 more years.
I don't think that's a problem. I really don't.
I think it's a huge problem, and I think our adversaries know that it's a problem.
Panel, we'll hold it right there.
I couldn't help but just look at the split screen on Sunday with Governor Josh Shapiro of the state of Pennsylvania. And I think the substance was largely the same, what Biden said on Monday and Sunday night and what the governor said. But there was a compassion. There was an empathy. I had sort of tears in my eyes listening to the story about the girl dad firefighter from Butler County who was saving his daughters and died and going to participate at a Trump rally. It was a very moving moment.
Shapiro's really good. Really good. He's also good on Israel. He's also good in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And if it was Kamala Harris and Shapiro.
So I have many fantasy tickets. And some days it's Joe Biden. And
not recent days?
No, in some recent days. I just, when you listen to focus groups and you especially listen to Black voters who are pretty uniform about this, I'm still on the fence about it. But, Kamala, Josh Shapiro, I love Kamala, Roy Cooper, and they know each other really well.
Governor of North Carolina.
Andy Bashir. J.D. Vance v. Andy Bashir is pretty interesting. Josh Shapiro, I still and maybe this is like a self-hating Jew thing, I don't think we're electing a Jew. And that's my concern about Josh Shapiro. I know he's really good on Israel. I know that it'll be persuasive for people, but, I have concerns about it.
I think
finish your thought, Josh.
Well, at this late stage, I think if there's going to be a succession, it's got to be the vice president, and she at least has
the top of the ticket for sure.
Abortion is an issue that's going to drive the Democratic base, so that's a plus in terms of getting that message across. On the other hand, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, I think she's not a particularly effective candidate, and I don't know if you're going to want to go through all the chaos of replacing the sitting president against his will for a vice president who doesn't really poll appreciably better than he does. And that's the dilemma that the Democrats are facing.
J.D. Vance, offers a number of positives. The Rust Belt, I think you send them in a bus in all those Rust Belt states. You send them to Pennsylvania, then you send them back to Pennsylvania and back again. And you just leave them there. And he's very effective in working class. On foreign policy, Mr. Secretary, there are concerns in some corners of the Republican Party about what that signals about Ukraine, about NATO, about other big policy decisions.
Yeah, look, I've seen what he said. By the way, full disclosure, I campaigned for JD in Ohio when he was competing in his Senate race now a number of months back. Had a great time moving around Ohio with him. He and I do have a different view on how important it is to be victorious against Vladimir Putin and how best to achieve that. But I served this president for 4 years. I served President Trump for 4 years. I'm very confident that he understands this well also. NATO was stronger when we left. The very Javelin missiles that saved Kyiv that night weren't delivered to Ukraine by President Obama. They weren't delivered by Vice President Biden or President Biden. They were delivered in the Trump administration. And so I'm convinced that I know there's a lot of fretting and hand-wringing in places around the world. I'm convinced that America will be stronger on the world stage, that Europe will be more secure, but most importantly, we'll go back to putting America first, and we will have fewer conflicts, fewer places our young men and women have to go fight and risk their lives, and that America's capacity to lead on the global stage economically, diplomatically, and have a very capable military will be in a far better place under President Trump than we are 3.5 years into the Biden administration.
If Donald Trump is the 47th president, would you go back in?
If I am asked and I can serve and make a difference, I would go back in a heartbeat.
Interesting. What about, last thing, about the message coming out of here from both Vance and from Trump on Thursday?
My sense is what you will see coming out of here as the run up to Chicago in a couple of weeks is you have a very united Republican Party around a conservative message, and you have a Democratic Party where you have one of the stalwarts who tried to impeach the president of the United States, Adam Schiff. You have him saying, "Oh my gosh, we're going to get crushed." Those are two very different messages. As we come out of our convention and the Democrats move into theirs, the Democrats are going to really struggle to get their arms around how do you come out of that and you surge into these, what are the final 8 weeks of the campaign with a coherent theme.
Yeah. I'm told that President Biden is going to try to do this media push and a bunch of rallies next week after this convention. By the way, we're in line. We're in talks with the White House, but it hasn't happened yet, but we'll see. Is that a test, do you think, Jessica? At the end of next week that suddenly, if he doesn't pass, the party goes, okay, let's start the process?
No, because that's just a running the clock strategy, which is what he's been doing. And no one would ever wish what happened on Saturday to happen, but it undoubtedly helped President Biden, right? Every time it helped Biden stay in power.
Oh, stay in power.
Right,
Got it.
Because it runs the clock more. You're not going to push the guy out on Sunday. You're not going to, and then he has Lester Holt, right? And he announces something. It's like the crumbs, whatever, the breadcrumbs that you're leaving. And then eventually we're in Chicago and it's like, hey, I'm your guy. So I understand what they're doing. And I also understand the people who are cautious about this. And I remain in that camp where it's risky both sides of this decision. But I want him to do, and I say this all the time on the 5, I think he's really good, like off the cuff and talking to people. And when he has these little moments where he's unscripted, he says great stuff and people like him, from the campaign in 2020 up through little interviews, like those comments that he was making about the secret to a healthy marriage, right? Talking about how beautiful he thinks his wife is. And, people like that and they connect with that. And I just want him out as much as possible. I'd love to see him on Fox. A lot of his,
some people like that, but some people like the media handlers are stone cold white, watching
I know they're
biting their nails, as he calls Kamala Harris, Vice President Trump.
Jessica and I agree. I agree, Jessica. I'd like to have him out there a lot too. Totally unscripted.
Last word, John.
Yeah, the line I hear from the White House is he has good days and bad days. Right. I mean, he had a good rally in Detroit, and then I thought that interview on Monday with Lester Holt was not good, to put it mildly. If that's the process, that's what's leading to this sort of sclerosis, and they can't make a decision, and he's not going anywhere. It seems, and that he ultimately has a very tight inner circle, and if they're telling him that he can win and he doesn't need to do anything to step aside, then I don't think he's going to step aside.
But if you're on the back end of Nancy Pelosi working the phones, you got a bad couple of days ahead. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. Now for a bit of history. June 17th, 1856, the first Republican National Convention took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Amidst talks of pending civil war and fears of national crisis, Republicans gathered in Philadelphia's Musical Fund Hall to pick the Republican Party's first presidential candidate. The competition was primarily between U.S. Supreme Court Justice John McClain and retired Army officer and founder of the California Republican Party, John C. Fremont. When it came to the formal ballot, Fremont had secured his place as the first Republican presidential nominee. Fremont ended up losing the election to Democrat James Buchanan when the vote was split due to the Know Nothing political party. There you go. That'll do it for this week. You can hear more of this series at foxnewspodcast.com, wherever you download podcasts. Make sure to leave a rating and a review. We want to hear from you. For Mike, Jessica, and Josh, I'm Bret Baier. We'll see you next time. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.